I'm Professor A, and I'm joined, as always, by the dingo of 1,000 tongues, Professor Dogger, and Professor J, who lives on the other side of the world. Hi, Professor J.
Hello.
As you are no doubt aware, because you obviously watched last episode, we are continuing with our study of some of the lyrics of Mr. Nick Cave. Here's a question to start us off. Do you know where Mr. Nick Cave is going to be tomorrow, Professor J?
Oh, I do not know. Oh, yes, I do know. I do know. He's going to be at the coronation of the new King of England.
Chucky 3.
Chucky 3. This time it's personal.
Yeah, quite. Yes, he's part of the official Australian delegation, which is strange.
He's part of the Australian delegation because
yes,
I wondered what he was doing there, and then I saw his response saying that he I forget what he said. People were surprised that he was supporting the monarchy in that way, and he said it was more sort of representing British culture, right? That's what he said.
And being part of a historical event, yes.
Yeah.
He also strangely said that when he met the Queen Elizabeth II, Lizzie II, that she glowed, and she was the most charismatic woman he'd ever met. So, well, there you go.
She'd been standing too near a radiation field or something. That's why
probably had the Higgs boson blues or something. Yes, I should think so.
Yeah. So I mean, since we're doing current events, it's also a day after your fella had his court case. I've forgotten his name.
Oh, that lad.
Edward Sheeran.
I'm not aware of anything Ed Sheeran's done ever because I don't want to know really. What's he done?
He'll be on the list at some point. So he was some of his lyrics. There was a court case brought by the family of Marvin Gaye, claiming that his lyrics were stolen from the song. I forget which song it was. And he said during the court case that if he lost the court case, he was going to give up music.
Did he?
He won the court case. So his lyrics and the music was not.
Well, that's no fun.
Was no fun.
No.
Am I allowed to put in another joke about Nick Cave and not
Absolutely.
knowing
Why not?
that Nicolas Cage didn't know he was an actor and a singer? Am I allowed to do that joke again?
I think you just did. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. So let's dive in. So the next song we have chosen is Dig Lazarus Dig. This is from the 14th studio album. 14 studio albums.
That's a lot of albums.
It's a lot of albums.
It's more than the Beatles managed, isn't it?
I mean, the Beatles were only together, as we previously discussed on one of our podcasts, they were only together for a very short period of time. I think their recording history, if I remember correctly, was 1963 to 1969. So that was 6 or 7 years, depending on how your maths
probably
works.
About 2 albums a year because people did things like that back then. So yes, he's probably Beatles-esque amount of albums from Nick Cave, and he's continued since, obviously. Anyway, that was a really useless digression. Carry on, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So 14th studio album, 2007. What have you got to say about this song, Professor A?
Well, the reason I picked this song, for these songs were my picks. We take it in turns. The reason I picked this song is just I thought it was funny. Having studied the lyrics a bit further, it's not really funny, but I just found it amusing when I listened to it. I don't think it's particularly musically great by his standards.
It's very jolly. It's jaunty.
It seems to be jolly and jaunty. Yeah,
it's a jaunty little song. He's smiling in the video. So it must be a jaunty little song, right?
Must be, yes. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's dive into some lyrics. Dig yourself, Lazarus, etc. Dig yourself back in that hole. I'm going to read the first verse. Larry made his nest up in the autumn branches, built from nothing but high hopes and thin air. Collected up some baby blasted mothers. They took their chances, and for a while they lived quite happily up there.
Yes. Obviously, this is referring to the biblical story of Jesus raising a chap called Lazarus from the dead, which for you Bible fanatics can be found in John 11:1-44, apparently.
Oh. Hey, he's talking about the Bible again. That's a surprise.
Yeah, he does that, doesn't he? He loves a bit of Bible. Yes, so obviously Larry is the nickname Cave is applying to Lazarus. Larry made his nest up in the autumn branches. It's sort of like he's making himself, after being resurrected, I presume this is, he's making himself a little sanctum.
Well, I mean, if we can, before we get into that, let's just speak a little bit about where this song is coming from. And from what I read, Nick Cave was sort of fascinated by the Lazarus story when he was a kid. He just found it a really fascinating story. And then later on, he sort of found it a bit disturbing that this guy had died and then been raised from the dead. And he was wondering how this guy's life would have continued after this moment, knowing the fact that he was dead. And then, so he's taken this Larry, the Lazarus character, and put him in New York.
Yeah, I'll give you a quote to cover that, which he posted on his MySpace blog.
Wow.
Do you remember MySpace, Professor Joe?
I do remember MySpace.
Yeah.
Another world.
It was. Anyway, he said, ever since I can remember hearing the Lazarus story when I was a kid, back in church, I was disturbed and worried by it. Traumatized, actually. We are all, of course, in awe of the greatest of Christ's miracles, raising a man from the dead, but I couldn't help but wonder how Lazarus felt about it. As a child, it gave me the creeps, to be honest. I've taken Lazarus and stuck him in New York City in order to give the song a hip contemporary feel. I was also thinking about Harry Houdini, who spent a lot of his life trying to debunk the spiritualists who are cashing in on the bereaved. Harry was Lazarus, of course, being the greatest. Oh, sorry, no, he was the second greatest escapologist, Harry was. Lazarus, of course, being the greatest. I wanted to create a kind of vehicle, a medium for Houdini to speak to us if he so desires, from beyond the grave. He added, it is, most of all, an elegy to the New York City of the 70s. So, it's set in the 70s, which wasn't immediately apparent from the lyrics. But yes.
So Larry made his. Maybe we should do the second verse as well, because I think there's a bit there. So let's go into that. He came from New York City, man, but he couldn't take the pace. He thought it was a dog-eat-dog world, but he went to San Francisco, spent a year in outer space with a sweet little Franciscan girl. Because he's saying that in the previous verse, he's saying that he made his nest up in the autumn branches. So I see that as, Californian, North California. What do you think?
That can be. I just thought it was a sort of a seclusion away from above the people, keeping separate. Who knows? What about him collecting up some baby-blasted mothers?
I kind of feel that was the people that he was hanging around with, and he was just hanging out with people who'd had hard life, lots of children, and that's how I interpret it. How about you?
Yeah, he's just well, I think later on in the lyrics, it probably suggests that he's seducing these women away from their families.
Yeah.
Also, you said with a sweet little Franciscan girl. I don't think she was a Franciscan monk. It's San Franciscan girl.
Did I say that?
Yes, Fred, you did.
Well, of course, the Franciscans were all male as well. So
yes, have you been to San Francisco?
Yes, I have.
Yes, so have I. It's a lovely place. Particularly enjoyed Alcatraz. Yes.
Yeah, I've got a good friend who has a view on the bridge.
Nice.
From Berkeley. Okay, more lyrics.
I attended a class at Berkeley. Advanced mathematics class.
All right. So that was Berkeley, not Berkeley, the famous music school.
No, Berkeley. UC
Berkeley. Yeah.
UC Berkeley.
UCal.
I was seeing a not very sweet little San Franciscan girl at the time. She was studying a master's in maths and dragged me along to a class. Bayesian logic, I think it was. That was interesting.
Bayesian geometry.
I don't know.
Next lines. I can hear my mother wailing and a whole lot of scraping of chairs. I don't know what it is, but there's definitely something going on upstairs. Dig yourself, Lazarus, etc. Dig yourself back in that hole. I want you to dig.
Yes, I think this. I can hear my mother wailing and a whole lot of scraping of chairs. I think that's referring to his funeral, which would suggest that he's somehow able to hear it, even though he hasn't been resurrected yet. But his mother's wailing, a lot of scraping of chairs, and that sounds like a whole lot of people standing up at once at the end of a service or something.
Yep.
I think.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
I mean, so dig yourself. I think that's, this whole thing that there's definitely something going on upstairs. So again, maybe during the funeral, he hears all this commotion. He comes up, but finally, he wants to get back in his hole.
Yeah, it could be that. What I'd thought of for the something going on upstairs was that sounds like a diagnosis. If someone in a coma or whatever. Don't know why he's in a coma, but his brain's still working or something. But yeah, yours is good. Yeah,
I kind of like it in a coma, as
Mr.
Axl Rose said. Okay, so let's continue with the story because it is a sort of story lyrics. This one. New York City. He had to get out of there, and San Francisco. Well, I don't know, and then to LA, where he spent about a day. Even he thought even the pale sky stars were smart enough to keep well away from LA. I'll do another verse. Meanwhile, Larry made up names for the ladies like Miss Boo and Miss Quick. He stockpiled weapons and took pot shots in the air. He feasted on their lovely bodies like a lunatic and wrapped himself up in their soft yellow hair.
Yeah. Well, obviously he's moved from New York City to San Francisco. We already knew that, but now he's saying, well, I don't know. He's not sure if that's the right place for him. So he moves to LA, where he spends a day, because everyone keeps away from LA. Some people I read the opinions of think that this is referring to how polluted LA is, and it's just not very nice. And they also thought, well, I think this is a bit of a stretch. It could be a reference to a line in The Little Sister by Raymond Chandler, a noir detective fiction book, which says he was smoking and looking up at the pale stars, which know enough to keep their distance from Hollywood. So possibly mentions the pale stars and keeping away from LA. So could well be. Stockpiled weapons. This brings to mind to me two things. It could be the Waco situation where David Koresh and his followers were stockpiling weapons and locked themselves away into a compound and were eventually pretty much all killed by the I believe it was the ATF, the Agency for Tobacco and Firearms, because it's now the ATF.
That was Texas, right?
Yeah, Waco, Texas. Yeah, it's now ATFE, alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosives. So, there you go. And the other thing could well be reference to Charles Manson, who stole a song from the Beatles, famously. He led, of course, the family. He was a demagogue. He persuaded lots of young people to do his bidding in various ways. And though he has officially never committed a murder himself, he incited others to in the famous Sharon Tate murders in California. But it is heavily rumoured that he actually murdered several people on his ranch in Death Valley. So could be a reference to either of those. He feasted on their lovely bodies like a lunatic. Could be sexual, could be cannibalistic, could be, who knows. It's probably not that he's murdering these ladies, because I think they later are mentioned again, but there's sort of references both ways.
Yeah, and this whole wrapping up in the yellow hair, it's just
Don't know. Sorry.
yeah. I mean, boo is also a sort of term of endearment, right? It is a common word, and then Miss Quick again. I think that's a sexual reference, right?
Probably, yes.
All right, let's carry on. I can hear chants and incantations, and some guys mentioning me in his prayers. I don't know what it is, but there's definitely something going on upstairs. Dig yourself, Lazarus. Dig yourself back in that hole. I want you to dig. So here, with the chants and incantations and mentioning in the prayers, I think this really comes back to what you were saying about the, some sort of cultish type thing.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's partially that, and also these people became very famous worldwide as well. People who weren't in their cults after cult activities were exposed. So I think it's highly likely that chants and incantations can be the cult, and people praying for their soul when their deeds have been released to the public at large. I'd have thought.
Yeah.
Was the mentioning.
Yeah. Okay, some more lyrics. Well, New York City man, San Francisco, LA, I don't know. But Larry grew increasingly neurotic and obscene. I mean, he never asked to be raised up from the tomb. I mean, no one ever actually asked him to forsake his dreams. Anyway, to cut a long story short, fame finally found him. Mirrors became his torturers. Cameras snapped him at every chance. The women all went back to their homes and their husbands with secret smiles in the corners of their mouths.
Yeah, so it's a continuation of the same thing. New York City to San Francisco to LA. And now Larry's getting a bit tired of this new life he's got, his resurrection, I think. As it said, he never asked to be raised up from the tomb. According to the Bible, Lazarus' sisters tell Jesus that Lazarus is sick and dying. By the time Jesus gets there, he's dead. And Jesus decides himself, without consulting the sisters or obviously Lazarus, who's dead, that he will raise him from the grave. To prove that he can perform a resurrection. The Bible says then, Lazarus, as he appeared, the dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen, the cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. And that's it. You don't hear his reaction to it. It could be, great, I'm back again, thanks Jesus. It could be, oh no, poor Larry. We get that later. So this is also this same theme about Lazarus not wanting to come back from the dead is explored in a novel by John Connolly, who is quite possibly my favourite author. It's not a novel, it's a short story called Lazarus. It's pretty much the same thing, except he doesn't go touring America and blowing up people with stockpiled weapons or whatever. Yes.
And there's also the thing about Jesus wept, right? So that's the whole thing about Lazarus, which has taken another level of intensity.
It's the shortest verse in the Bible.
Yes. It's just showed his human nature, I guess. I never really compassion.
Yes, I guess so. Fame finally found him. Mirrors became his torturers. Cameras snapped him at every chance. This is either his cult activities have been exposed, or he has become famous for being resurrected.
Yeah, that's my guess.
Yeah, and I think it's quite nice the way he depersonalizes it by having mirrors are his torturers and cameras are snapping at him. It's not people snapping the cameras at him; it's the objects themselves. So this could be another example of that thing we talked about in the last episode, which I can't remember the name of. Apothenia, was it?
Yep.
So I think that could be another example of that. Basically, he's become a celebrity. And he's being chased by paparazzis. don't know why
Yeah.
mirrors would become his torturers. Perhaps he doesn't like the way he looks. Perhaps he looks different since he came back. I don't know.
There's the zombies. Zombies have a reflection. It's vampires that don't have a reflection.
Obviously, yes.
Okay, let's go into the final verse. He ended up, like so many of them do, back in the streets of New York City in a soup queue.
Stop. You listed it. Should be the women all went back to their homes.
I said that bit.
Did you?
I said that bit. The women all went back to their homes and their husbands with secret smiles in the corners of their mouths.
Right. Yeah, well, that suggests that he didn't murder them earlier.
That is true. It was sexual.
Yes. So, there we go. Yes, carry on. Sorry.
Smiles. Yes. So he's in a soup queue, a dope fiend, a slave, then prison, then the madhouse, then the grave. Oh, poor Larry. But what do we really know of the dead, and who actually cares? Well, I don't know what it is, but there's definitely something going on upstairs. Dig yourself, Lazarus. Dig yourself back in that hole I want you to dig. Yeah. So
it's well, basically the descent from fame that could happen to anyone, not just necessarily someone who's resurrected, but it's definitely a very quick downward spiral.
He has his 15 minutes of fame, doesn't like it,
yes,
and then bish bosh bash, he's a goner.
Yeah, right. So dope fiend, a slave. I'm not sure how he becomes a slave, but okay. In the 70s,
a jaunty song.
Yeah,
but it is jaunty.
Yeah, it is.
I like it. I like the song.
Yeah. What do we really know of the dead? Well, I guess the point there is we don't. He does. So we can't really explain his actions and what happens to him. And who actually cares? Well, a bit sad that, really. Poor Larry.
Poor Larry. Anything else on this one?
Let me see. I do have some notes on this. That's not particularly interesting. That's not particularly... No, nothing to say on that.
Okay, so let's go to the next one. So the next one we've chosen is The Palaces of Montezuma, and it's not by Nick Cave at all. Who's it by?
It's by Grinder Man.
Not MC Grinder from People Just Do Nothing.
No, it was Grinder Man. I think the difference between Grinder Man and the Bad Seeds is that Nick Cave plays guitar. Oh, Grinder Man. Excuse me. Plays guitar in Grinder Man, which he doesn't in the Bad Seeds.
Right, he just plays piano, right?
Piano, keyboards, yeah.
Okay, so this is from the second and final Grinder Man album, which is called...
I believe they're planning a third at some point, but yes.
That's Grinder Man 2. It was released in 2011, although it was recorded in 2008 2009. We'll come back to Grinder Man chat in a bit. This is a long one, so I'm going to dive in. Okay. Psychedelic invocations of Matahari at the station. I give to you a Java princess of Hindu birth, a woman of flesh, a child of the earth. I give to you the hanging gardens of Babylon. Miles Davis, the black unicorn. I give to you the palaces of Montezuma and the gardens of Akbar's tomb. Should we pause there? There's more stuff he's given. I mean, he's talking about a lot of stuff.
He is. Well, I think we should just go say what the song is, really. I mean, it's obviously a love song.
So, I mean, maybe let's just... So who is Montezuma? Who was Montezuma?
Montezuma was the ruler of the Aztec state of Tenochtitlan. Tenochtitlan? I don't know. Yes, he was the Tlatoani, which is their name for the ruler. That was the capital of the Aztec Empire.
Yeah.
Prior to the conquistadors.
I think he was the first ruler of the Aztecs he was the one who was in charge when the first of the conquistadors arrived, I believe.
Yeah, at that time they controlled a significant portion of Central America. It was a large empire.
And a very ornate empire.
Yeah, they used a lot of jade. They did. They had a lot of jade. They had a lot of obsidian available to them, and they are sort of the things which decorated their palaces. They had a lot of gods which they would adorn with representations of those.
Yeah.
And they
And
were
jade being green, I mean, that's still
yes,
very special in Buddhism and some Chinese Buddhism as well as Zen Buddhism.
yeah.
The other one you said I've forgotten already, but it's the black
Obsidian.
stone, right?
It's
Obsidian,
going to be
yeah.
black,
It's the very
black or more rarely green again.
okay.
It's a volcanic rock.
Yeah. So it's a love story. It's a sort of splendor of these palaces of the ruler of a massive empire, and then he just starts by throwing a load of names at us. So psychedelic invocations, Matahari. So who's Matahari?
Matahari was actually Margaretta MacLeod, or Margaret, one or the other. She was an exotic dancer, found guilty of espionage in France and executed by firing squad during the First World War.
But she was really well known as this exotic dancer, right? So she would
Yes.
she had a weave a spell on people.
Yeah, Matahari, the stage persona, was based on a claim that she was a Javan princess, which is the next line. She was known for being highly erotic on stage and gained notoriety as a sort of symbol of promiscuity, I would say. She was definitely the seductress model of a spy.
The hanging. Why did they mention the Hanging Gardens of Babylon?
Hanging Gardens of Babylon were one of the original seven wonders of the world. I think the reason this one was chosen over the others is because it might not exist. There's never been any evidence found of where it was, and it might be fictitious. So it'd be the hardest one to find and give to your love interest.
Okay. Miles Davis.
Miles Davis, yes. Cave loves old jazz and blues. As we know, he based Tupelo on a blues song by John Lee Hooker. Miles Davis was he was a trumpeter, very famous and influential jazz musician.
Yeah, and one of a kind, right? So, undoubtedly one of the greatest jazz musicians of all time. Probably the best jazz trumpeter of all time. And, he started and he was very different. In the early days, his stuff wasn't liked a lot, but, some kind of blue. Because he had a different sound. He had a really different sound. This is in the late 60s. He had a very different sound to other jazz musicians at the time, but some kind of blue sort of blew that out of the water with what he made of jazz. So I was just wondering if the what the black unicorn refers to.
Oh, I think it refers to Miles Davis. A unicorn is something very rare and elusive, and he was a very rare and elusive talent. Also, a unicorn, of course, has a horn, and he played a horn. So.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Okay. The Gardens of Akbar's Tomb. Who was Akbar? I thought he was in Star Wars.
Star Wars. Admiral Akbar, yeah. The one who said, it's a trap, sorry. Yes. Akbar the Great was the third emperor of the Mughal dynasty, considered to be one of the greatest rulers of India. His tomb, which is still there, I believe, is an important monument. It was started by Akbar, but he predeceased his tomb, as you do, was finished by his son Jahangir. And the gardens around the tomb, which I mentioned, are about 120 acres of land. It's a very much a sort of sacred place in India. Not sacred religiously, but sacred in a way of venerated, maybe.
Okay. So he's quoting a load of big stuff. It's big talk.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically saying that he'd give anything in the world to this woman if she does what he says in the next section.
So let's go carry on with this first verse. Where did we get to? Akbar's tomb. I give to you the spider goddess and the needle boy and the slave.
No, sorry. No,
I mentioned.
Right, carry on.
Yeah,
Yes, you did. Yes, shut up.
And the slave dwarves that they employ. I give to you a custard-coloured super dream of Ali McGraw and Steve McQueen. I give to you. So, spider goddess. Who's that?
This one I couldn't work out at all. I mean, there's Arachne.
It's Arachne.
Greek legend, but what she's got to do with the needle boy? General. I did see someone on a web page saying that dwarves means fingers because it comes from the word dvergas, meaning digits. So it's something about. So it goes with the needle boy, fingers, and sewing. But I have no idea what it means really. Apparently, he also mentions the needle boy in a B-side track from his 2012 album, "Push the Sky Away." I don't know what the needle boy means. I have to say.
Okay. So it also mentions Ali McGraw and Steve McQueen. So who's?
Yeah, so they are obviously actors. They co-starred in the 1972 film "The Getaway," during which they had an affair, and McGraw divorced her husband Robert Evans, who was the producer of the film, and McGraw and McQueen were married from 1973 to 1978, which is a long time for a Hollywood couple, let's face it.
Yeah. But he died, he wasn't very well, let's say. He died within 2 years of them splitting it because he was
really? I didn't realize that.
Pretty long gone.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, he was pretty wild on the happy stuff. All right, so he's listed all this stuff he's going to give. Yeah, but hang on, custard-coloured super dream.
Yeah, all I could think of for this was it's. Excuse me, that's a dog. That's noisy. Stop it.
She likes these words.
Yeah, she does. What she doesn't like is the cat in the garden, unfortunately. Oh. Custard coloured. All I could think of was sepia tone photographs, maybe sort of a misty looking back thing. I don't really know what.
I mean, they were a power couple, right? Ali McGraw, Steve McQueen. They're both beautiful people. So,
yes.
That's it. Okay, more words. Come on, baby, let's get out of the cold and gimme your precious love for me to hold. So I think that just says, come on, let's be having you. Let's have a thing.
I think so. Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm going to crack on with the next lines. The Epic of Gilgamesh, a pretty little black A-line dress. I give to you the spinal cord of JFK, wrapped in Marilyn Monroe's negligee. I give to you, I want nothing in return, just the softest little breathless word. I ask of you, a word contained in a grain of sand that can barely walk, can't even stand. I ask for you. So Gilgamesh.
Yeah, the Epic of Gilgamesh is an ancient Sumerian tale about a king with mystical powers. He's a half god, and a lot of people regard it as the first great work of literature, and it's one of the first works of literature, of great or not, to be honest. Do you have anything to say about Gilgamesh? He was meant to have a really impressive beard, I can tell you that.
I've seen the pictures of him, the king of Uruk.
Yes.
With his beard. So it goes from the Epic of Gilgamesh to a pretty little black A-line dress. It feels like a massive jump.
It is. I mean, everything else has been something amazing, something sort of fabled, legendary, even in some cases. And he's going to a dress. I think it's just he wants her to wear this pretty little dress. But there could well be some other reason for it.
Yeah. Lost to me. So then he mentions spinal cord of JFK and wrapped in Marilyn Monroe's negligee.
Yeah. John Fitzgerald Kennedy, of course, the President of the United States, who was shot in Dallas. Was it 63? I can't remember.
Something like
that. And I believe he was shot, I believe one of the bullets passed through his spinal cord, but he was shot in the back of the neck, the back of the head, I think. He was rumoured to be having an affair with Marilyn Monroe, the famous film actress. So again, this is a sort of a reiteration of an affair like Ali MacGraw and Steve McQueen.
Yeah.
So it could be possible that he's trying to seduce someone else's wife. That's entirely possible.
So before we go on from JFK, I mean, JFK did have chronic back pain. He had 4 back operations, including a discectomy, which is the removal of a disc. You take out a disc between the vertebrae and fuse the spine, and instrumentation and fusion. And he lived with chronic back pain all through his life. I mean, you're not messing around when you're not messing around when you take out a disc. You know, this is a pretty serious operation. And there is some. There is, before I move on, there is some saying that because he was wearing a brace when he was shot because of his back pain and this back problem that he had, that if he hadn't have been wearing that, then the second he might have been able to move out of the way quicker, and the second shot might have not. He might not have died from the assassination.
Right.
Point of that, I think.
To be honest, though, he was lucky just to have that back stuff. Are you aware of his sister, Rose Kennedy? She was a bit rebellious, so her dad had her lobotomized, and she had a mental age of about 4 for the rest of her life. Sort of lived in a wheelchair, and dribbling and not understanding anything until she died in her 80s. So, nice family, the Kennedys.
Wow.
Completely irrelevant to this song. Yes.
Yeah. So he wants the softest little breathless word contained in a grain of sand. So what's this grain of sand?
This comes from William Blake's Songs of Innocence and Experience. To see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. That's what he's referring to there.
Yeah.
But I think he actually in the song says a word contained in a grain of sand, doesn't he? Not a world.
Yeah, but he's asking for the word.
Yes.
That's the point. That's the point of the lyric, right? That he's asking for the word, the L word.
Yeah, it's a word that can barely walk, can't even stand. So it's a word that could start out being not sure and could get stronger, maybe. So an infant word can't even stand. Bad say.
Okay. So last verse, I believe. Come on, baby, let's get out of the cold. Give me your precious love for me to hold. Out the cold. Give me your love for me to hold.
Yep.
That's it.
I think that's to say about the lyrics.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a basic love song. Going back to Grinder Man. So, I mean, as I mentioned in that first song, it was their 14th studio album, and from what I read, he was just kind of a bit overwhelmed with the pressure of being Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. So they started Grinderman as something where they could just be a bit more experimental and just less pressure. I don't know if it worked.
Well, this song is very much not typical of the two Grinderman albums. They're very much sort of noisecore,
yeah,
quite coarse lyrics, and then they've got this beautiful little love song tacked in there. First time I heard this song was on the closing credits of an episode of Luther, the BBC crime drama starring Idris Elba, before he became an absolute megastar. And I just thought, that's a really lovely song. Before he became a megastar.
Right, okay.
I thought that's a beautiful little song, and I thought, it sounds a bit like Nick Cage. Cage, yes, Nick Cave. I looked it up, and it was Nick Cave. And then I sort of purchased the Grinderman albums and listened to them. And I have to say, I don't really like the rest of them. I think the Bad Seed stuff is much, much better. But this song I really like. Do you want a quote from Mr. Gay? A couple of quotes from Mr. Gay. Are you aware, Professor J, of the Red Hand files?
We've spoken about the Red Hand gang.
Oh, we've spoken about the Red Hand song. We didn't speak about the Red Hand files, did we?
We did. I mentioned the Red Hand files, but
oh, okay.
Go on.
Fair enough. You are aware of them, then.
It's his notes, right? And it's his website and something, isn't it?
It's basically his agony aunt column. He answers a lot of questions about his songs, which is great, and he also basically tries to help people with their problems. And his writing on it is absolutely beautiful. He is so good at the writing thing. But anyway, one of the letters he received said, I recently read that the band Rising Signs believed Palaces and Montezuma plagiarized their 2005 song Grey Man. And his response was a lovely question, and one that brings us back to Palaces and Montezuma. If I recall correctly, Warren wrote the chords and backing vocal line to this song. I just listened to Rising Signs Grey Man, and it does sound pretty effing similar. So I phoned Warren, who's in lockdown in his studio in Paris, and asked him outright, did you steal Palaces and Montezuma from Rising Signs? F no, he says. I stole it from the Laughing Clowns. So, there you go. Bit of plagiarism. Another quote he said, another letter on the Red Hand files. He says, I love Palaces and Montezuma, I really do. Amid all the obvious excesses of Grinderman, this song stands out as a simple and heartfelt declaration of human love, with a surreal and wonderfully effed up lyric. It has a sort of versatile inner spirit that seems to work in any form. I played it a number of times solo at the piano on my own conversation tour. I was able to slow it down a bit and lean into the lyric, and that seemed to work great too. I got to know the song pretty well. But even so, I'm not really sure what inspired the lyric. It's not the sort of question I feel I have the authority to answer. These songs, just present themselves. It seems to me to be essentially a cascade of increasingly bizarre and impossible acts of largesse performed in the name of love. It seems to say, I love you and I'll give you the world. All I require is the smallest word. What that word actually is remains a mystery. It may be love or sex or God or yes or thou or all, or not a word at all, a sigh, a grace. Whatever the word may be, it is essentially the whole world contained in a grain of sand that can barely walk, can't even stand. And then he also goes on to say he thinks it might also have been partly inspired by a Lou Reed song called Andy's Chest.
Called what?
Andy's Chest.
Andy's Chest. Okay.
But he says that was not a conscious inspiration. But he.
Okay. So we mentioned that Grinderman was named after, was inspired by the Memphis Slim song, the Grinderman Blues.
Oh, did not know that. What I heard was that he and the band were all stating what their porn name would be. That was his. So that's probably apocryphal.
Not that bad. Okay. Well,
right. Do you have anything else to say on this song?
Nothing else to say on this one.
Shall we have a 5-minute tea break?
Let's do that.
See you in a minute. Hi there, we're back. Unfortunately, after having our tea break, pressures of work mean we have to stop here for today. We will finish Nick Cave finally in part 3, which will be released soon. All we're trying to do here is just basically get 1% better each time we release a video, and I'm not convinced we've done that this time. But small improvements. We are still getting used to the technology here. It's completely different to what we've done before, and that might well be affecting the quality of what we're saying. But we will do everything we can to get better each time, and we very much appreciate your support. So we will see you next time.
Yes, please like, subscribe, all that jazz.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay.